Hi, I'm Deborah Hill from AUSVEG, and today we are at Hort Connections to have a chat with Dr Daniel Drost, who is an onion specialist from the US, who is out here as part of the Onion Fund Inward Bound tour. So welcome, Dr Drost.
Well, thank you, Deb. That's really nice of you to invite me. I've had such a wonderful time here. I'm a professor at Utah State University in the state of Utah near Salt Lake City, and my job there is to work with the vegetable industry to help them solve their problems, and so we do that by doing both research and outreach or extension-related stuff.
So you're here principally to talk about onions to Australian onion growers. So you've done a lot of work in the US with onion growers, I assume. What would you say are the typical commonalities within the US growers that can be then applied to Australian growers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that presently the issues that we're dealing with in America that I've seen here in Australia are, first of all, will do with the climate and how climate is driving things. We have hot summers, dry summers, so we've got issues with water, so that's another issue that's really important for us. Our growers are struggling with labor, which I think is something that many Australian growers would say that's a real problem for us. And then we have these complexes of pests and diseases, whether they're weeds or insects or pathogens in the soil or pathogens in storage. All of those things are equally important to our onion growers in the U.S., and therefore the information that I've tried to convey to the growers here shows that there's a lot of commonality. And so this has been a really great visit because they, I think, are understanding the commonalities that we have.
So one of the things that you have discussed in your presentation here for the onion growers was around onion thrip, is that right?
Yes, correct. Onion thrips have always been a problem in the crop. As the name implies, the little insect loves onions, but it loves a lot of other things. And so what we have worked on in research over the last 25 years is trying to manage an insect that is kind of unmanageable. Mm-hmm. It's there, it's always going to be there. And now as a farmer, how can I do practices that will mitigate that risk and still be able to get the production that I'm interested in?
Right, so you mentioned pests and diseases. So are there simple things that growers can be doing? For example, the one that comes to mind is having a longer neck at harvest to reduce neck rot through botrytis and so on. Are there simple things that we can be, the low-hanging fruit, if you like, to increase yields and lower risk?
Yeah, Deb, there really are. And the things that I kind of tell our growers when they're working with onions is, first off, kind of understand the system that you're using. If you can extend the time period between growing an onion crop, so your rotation, how long that is, the longer it is, the less problems you have. When you're also dealing with the management on a year-to-year basis, nutrient management becomes really critical, and nitrogen in particular. So if those onions are really lush and vigorous and soft, then they are going to see a lot more problems than if they're a little bit underfed, so to speak. They're not really underfed, but they look kind of like that. And then water management becomes equally important, and how we time it, how we apply it, where it kind of interacts with the plant. So if we can do those types of things, the plant will be able to be resilient enough to be able to withstand the stresses that are going to be imposed upon it by the climate.
I guess that's a holistic approach, and you've used the term integrated management as part of your presentation. Is that where you're going with that kind of thing?
That's exactly right. I kind of say to the farmers that I work with, and the message that I tried to convey to the Australian farmers that were in the presentation was that we have to look at the farmscape. And the farmscape is all of those things that are going on in the farm and the things that are coming into the farm from around the farm that may be out of your control. And if we can think about all of those things, we can get a holistic, broad picture look at it, and then we can then begin to find the areas that are problematic and work towards solving them.
You've now been to South Australia to see some of the major onion growing regions in Australia. What are your perspectives compared to what you have seen elsewhere in the world?
the one thing that always amazes me is I've worked with onion farmers in Europe. I've gone to onion farms in South America. I've gone to onion farms across the United States. The similarities between the farms is greater than the dissimilarities.
Right.
And so if we can utilize the resources that are out in the world, bring them to places to share that information, that the net effect of it is we're all going to benefit from that. And so when I was invited to come, it was like, yes, I want to take this opportunity because I think I have a story to tell that's a little bit unique, and yet at the same time, the growers that we've discussed with so far have said, oh, you really understand my system, and I've never really been to their farm, so how could I understand their system? Because onions are onions, and they pretty much need the same thing, regardless of whether they're grown in the tropical, or whether they're grown in the high latitudes, or whether they're grown in the wet areas, or they're in the dry areas, or the hot areas, or the cold areas. They all kind of require the same thing.
So I guess from there, individual growers will have their individual names, but there will be commonalities, yeah?
Yeah, and ultimately when you grow a crop, you need to have good soil. You need to be soil that's healthy and full of organisms, and it has to have the right nutrients in it. And you need water, and you need good quality plant material to go into that. So those are the commonality type of things as we have it. But, individually, the climate from here to someplace else can be very different. And so the risks that we're managing on the farm are always kind of tied to our environment. And so we need to understand the things that are similar, and then we need to just focus our attention individually on what's different. And most of the time it's where I'm growing them is different.
Yeah,
and so
right.
I don't know your climate. I said, I know where I live.
Yep.
I know my property. But when I go to someone else's property, I don't know that one very well. And so I have to learn that, but you know that. So you tell me what your property is like, what your climate is like, what kind of issues you think you're having, and then we'll be able to discuss how to solve those problems.
Okay. Looking forward then, what do you see as some of the challenges and opportunities for onion growers?
I think the challenges, Deb, that we're going to focus on are, just trying to improve our quality, because ultimately the farm is a business, and the business needs to make money. And so therefore the grower, regardless of where he is in the world, he needs to have a really high quality product to be able to enter the marketplace. We're going to have to sort through some of the little nuances that cause variability on the farm, so that all the paddocks or all the bulbs in the field are very similar, because that makes it more efficient for me to do all the other things that I need to do. And so those are going to be our challenges going forward. And then we're going to just need to, kind of cope with a changing environment that I just have no control over, and adapt what I do to solve that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here in Australia for the Hort Connections 2024 and to be part of the Onion Fund project. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay while you're here in Australia.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie. It's been wonderful, and welcome. The welcome that I've received from the growers has been phenomenal, and the interaction has been really, really special. And so I think I get a better sense as to what you're doing here, and then really find out that we aren't that different. We're just a long ways away from each other.
Indeed. Thank you so much.